I just found out my wife of 10 years secretly inherited $500, $0 from her late uncle and convinced me to refinance our house on it, only to discover she's been funneling that money, plus the $200, $0 she's been saving from her job into a secret offshore account. And now she's threatening to sue me for half our property when I try to confront her. I never thought I'd be the guy to get blindsided like this, but here I am. My wife Emily and I had been together for 10 years. We married young, built a life, bought a house. On the surface, everything looked normal, happy, even, or at least that's what I thought. But in the last few months, I started noticing little things that didn't add up. She was more secretive about her phone, hiding her messages, deleting call logs. She'd leave her laptop open but quickly shut it when I came near. Small things, but enough to make me suspicious. Then I found out about the inheritance. Emily had always played her cards close to her chest about her family, but I knew her uncle had recently passed away. I didn't think much of it at first. Families grieve, right? But then she casually dropped that she inherited $500, $0 from her late uncle. Said she wanted to use some of it to refinance the house, upgrade the kitchen, maybe take a vacation. She was convincing, acting like this was just a windfall she was sharing with me, like it was our future. What I didn't know then was that she'd been hiding more than just money. I started noticing her behavior changing after that. She was more anxious, often sneaking off to her phone, whispering on calls late at night. She'd get defensive if I asked about her whereabouts or her plans. I brushed it off, telling myself she was just stressed over the inheritance, maybe planning a surprise for me. But deep down, I felt something was wrong. One night, I decided to check the bank statements, something I'd never done before. She always kept our finances transparent, or so I thought. I pulled up the online banking app when she was in the shower. That's when I saw it. Multiple transfers into an offshore account. I didn't understand the details at first, but I saw the amount, tens of thousands of dollars. Then I saw the source, her inheritance, plus a steady flow from her job savings, about $200, $0 in total. The money was being funneled somewhere and I had no idea where. My stomach dropped. I felt a mixture of shock, betrayal, and confusion. I'd always trusted her, believed we were in this together. Now I was staring at evidence of her lying, hiding, and probably cheating. I couldn't believe it. How could she do this? Not just hide money, but lie about it, manipulate me into refinancing the house using that inheritance, and then secretly funnel it away. The betrayal was worse than I could have imagined. I kept staring at the screen, trying to process what I'd just uncovered. The next step was clear: confront her. But I didn't want to do it blindly. I needed to gather more evidence, figure out exactly what she was up to. Still, I knew this wasn't just about money anymore. It was about trust, respect, and my entire marriage. I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. How did I miss all the signs? How did I let her get away with this? And most of all, what the hell was she planning to do with that offshore stash? I had no idea, but I was about to find out. The moment I decided to confront Emily, I knew I had to be careful. I couldn't just blurt out what I'd found. She was good at twisting things, spinning lies. I needed a plan. I spent the next day pretending everything was normal, watching her every move. She was still acting a bit on edge, but I figured that was just her usual bitchy attitude when she didn't get her way or when she was hiding something. That evening, I decided to set a trap. I left my phone nearby, recording a little bit of everything just in case I needed proof. I also made sure to have my laptop ready with all the bank statements pulled up so I could show her I knew what she'd been doing. When she came home from work, she was her usual self, bitchy, dismissive, snapping at anything I said. But I kept my cool. I told her I wanted to talk about the house, about our future. She rolled her eyes, but I pressed on. Finally, I asked her directly about the offshore account. Her face went pale for a split second, but then she laughed it off, trying to brush it away. "You're crazy," she said. "You're just paranoid. I don't know what you're talking about." I showed her the bank statements on my laptop and her eyes widened. She looked furious, then defensive. She started lying, saying the money was a mistake, that it was just some investment she was exploring, that she'd never do anything shady. But I wasn't buying it. The way she fidgeted, the way she avoided eye contact, it all screamed guilt. She then spun a new story. She claimed I was overreacting, that I was jealous and insecure, that I was accusing her of something she didn't do. She even tried to turn it around, saying I was the one hiding things from her. That's when I saw the real her, manipulative, bitchy, willing to lie her face off just to save herself. I felt my blood boil. How dare she accuse me of hiding stuff when she's been sneaking around with her offshore account and probably someone else? The confrontation heated up fast. I told her I knew she'd been funneling money away, that I had proof. Her response: she told me I was crazy, that I was ruining our marriage over nothing. She said she was entitled to her own money, that the inheritance was hers and hers alone. She even threw in some classic guilt-tripping bullshit, saying I was just jealous of her success and that I didn't trust her. But I could see it in her eyes. She was panicked, cornered. She knew I knew the truth. That night I felt a whirlwind of emotions: anger, betrayal, sadness, rage. I trusted her for so long, and now I realized she'd been lying and cheating right under my nose. It hurt more than I thought possible. I kept replaying everything she'd said, trying to find some reason to believe her excuses, but deep down I knew this was only the beginning. There was more to this than just hidden money. I had a sinking feeling she was up to something even worse, and I was just starting to understand how badly I'd been played. After that night, everything changed. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. My mind kept circling back to the money, to her lies, to what I'd discovered. I felt betrayed on every level: emotionally, financially, and morally. I started thinking about all the signs I missed, all the moments I brushed off because I wanted to believe she was still the woman I married. But now I saw her for what she really was: a liar, a manipulator, someone who'd been sneaking around behind my back for months, maybe longer. The next day, I decided I needed to know the full extent of her deception. I hired a private investigator. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but I needed proof. I told him to dig into her offshore account, find out where the money was going, who she was talking to. I also asked him to look into her phone and emails. I wanted to know if she'd been seeing someone else, if she'd been having sex with anyone. I had a gut feeling she was cheating, and I needed confirmation. A few days later, the pie called me with shocking news. Emily had been regularly meeting with a man named Mark, her business partner, she claimed. But the pie had caught her meeting him in secret at a hotel downtown, late at night. She'd been texting him constantly, exchanging flirty messages, even talking about future plans. It was clear she was having an affair and that she'd been hiding it all along. That was the final nail in the coffin for me. I confronted her again that evening, this time armed with everything I knew. I laid out the evidence: the offshore account, the hotel receipts, the texts. She didn't deny it. She just sneered, told me I was a fool for trusting her, that I was too stupid to see what she was doing. She said I was just jealous, that Mark was just a business associate, and that I was ruining everything because I couldn't accept her freedom to do what she wanted. But I wasn't buying her bullshit anymore. I looked her straight in the eyes and told her I knew she'd been cheating on me, lying to my face, using me. I told her I'd had enough. The betrayal cut deep, and I knew I couldn't stay married to someone who lied and cheated like that. I told her I was done, that I was filing for divorce. That's when she got even bitchier, screaming at me, calling me names, saying I was a jealous, insecure loser who didn't deserve her. The shock was still fresh, but I knew I had to act fast. I printed out all the evidence, packed my bags, and moved out that night. I didn't want to be around her anymore, couldn't stomach the thought of her with Mark or anyone else. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut, but at the same time, a tiny flicker of relief. I finally saw the truth, and I was finally free from the lies. That's when I started thinking about the money. The offshore account, the inheritance, her secret savings, all of it was part of her game. I realized that her plan was bigger than just cheating on me. She was trying to control everything, hide her tracks, and probably run off with her new guy. I knew I had to do something about it. I wasn't going to let her take everything I worked for, especially not after everything she'd done. I started planning my next move, knowing this wasn't over yet. Moving out was the hardest thing I'd ever done. I left the house that I'd poured my life into, the home we built together, knowing she was probably already planning her next move. The anger and betrayal still burned inside me, but beneath that I felt a strange sense of clarity. I had to get my life back, and that meant taking control of the situation, especially the money. I started by hearing a lawyer. I needed to understand what my rights were, especially with her threatening to sue for half our property. It was a mess. She was already talking about how I was trying to cheat her out of her fair share, and she was threatening to take me to court. But I had the evidence, proof of her offshore accounts, her secret savings, her lies. I knew I could fight her, but I also knew I had to be strategic. Meanwhile, I kept digging into her financials. I hired a financial advisor to trace the offshore money. Turns out, she'd been funneling that inheritance into a series of shell companies and offshore accounts in places like the Cayman Islands and Switzerland. She was trying to hide it all, but I had the right contacts. I got a court order to freeze those accounts, and I started building my case. Every dollar she'd hidden, I wanted it back. I did. Care if she called me vindictive. I was damn well going to get my fair share, and I was going to make sure she paid for her lies. But it wasn't just about the money. I also wanted her to face the consequences of her betrayal. I knew she'd been cheating on me, and I had proof. I was ready to bring that to court if I had to. I didn't want her to think she could get away with this. She lied about everything: her inheritance, her offshore accounts, her affair with Mark. I was furious, but I also felt a strange sense of calm. I was finally taking control. One day, I found out she'd been planning to move out of the country with her offshore stash. That was the breaking point. I realized she was trying to run away with everything, leaving me with nothing. That's when I decided I had to act fast. I filed for an emergency injunction to stop her from withdrawing any more money or leaving the country. I also served her with divorce papers. I wanted her to see that I wasn't going to just roll over and let her take everything she wanted. Her reaction was classic Emily. She screamed, called me a controlling bastard, and accused me of trying to ruin her life. She even tried to turn the tables, claiming I was the one cheating, just to muddy the waters. But I had the evidence, and I wasn't going to back down. I knew this was about justice, about reclaiming what was mine, and about stopping her from disappearing with the money she'd stolen from us both. In the end, I felt a strange mix of relief and rage. She thought she could manipulate, cheat, and lie her way out of this. But I was done being the victim. I was ready to fight for what was rightfully mine: money, trust, and my dignity. I knew it wasn't going to be easy, but I was committed. And as I sat there, looking at the mountain of evidence I'd gathered, I realized I'd finally taken back my life, piece by piece. The legal battle dragged on for months, and it was draining in every way imaginable. Emily did everything she could to drag it out, filing motions, accusing me of abuse, claiming I was trying to steal her inheritance. She even hired her own lawyer to fight my claims, trying to spin the story that I was the one cheating and controlling her. But I had the evidence: screenshots, bank records, offshore account details, witness statements from the pie that painted a clear picture. Still, she was relentless, throwing everything she had to keep her secrets hidden. I was living on edge, constantly worried she'd slip away with her offshore stash, or worse, that she'd find some loophole to get the property. She kept threatening to sue me for half the house, claiming I was trying to steal her money. I knew that wasn't true. I'd never wanted her inheritance for myself. What I wanted was transparency, honesty, and fairness. But she was trying to manipulate the situation, as she always did, twisting facts to suit her narrative. One day, I got a call from my lawyer. The court had ordered her to disclose all offshore accounts, and the judge was furious about her evasiveness. That was a turning point. I could see her face during the hearing. She was desperate, trying to keep her lies intact. But her excuses crumbled under the weight of the evidence. The judge was clear. She had to return all the hidden money, and she was ordered to stay in the country until the case was resolved. Meanwhile, I started rebuilding my life. I found a new place to stay, one that I could afford once I got my money back. I also began seeing a therapist, something I'd never done before, to help me process everything. The betrayal cut deep, and I realized I'd been through a lot more than just financial loss. I'd lost my sense of trust, my sense of security. But I was determined not to let her destroy me completely. I told myself I'd come out of this stronger, even if it meant starting over from scratch. As the court proceedings advanced, I realized how much she'd lied and manipulated. She convinced herself she could get away with everything because she was the wife, because she thought I'd never find out. But I'd uncovered her secrets, and now I had the upper hand. The offshore accounts were being frozen, and the judge had ordered her to pay back everything she'd stolen, plus penalties. I felt a small sense of victory, but I knew the hardest part was still ahead, getting her to accept the consequences of her actions. That realization hit me one evening as I sat alone, looking at the documents on my laptop. Emily's world was crumbling and she was furious. She called me names, accused me of ruining her life, and yelled that she'd never give me a penny of her hidden wealth. But I knew better. I had the proof, the court orders, and the law on my side. I was finally taking control of my life after feeling so powerless for so long. I didn't know exactly how everything would turn out, but I was committed to seeing it through, no matter how much she tried to fight me or how much she screamed. This whole ordeal made me realize how dangerous deceit and greed can be, especially when someone you trust turns out to be a complete stranger. I learned that money can turn people into monsters if they're not careful, and that sometimes you have to fight dirty to protect yourself. I'd been betrayed in the worst way imaginable, but I refused to let her win. I was done being the victim. It was time to reclaim what was mine and move on. The court case finally wrapped up after what felt like an eternity. Emily's lies had been exposed completely. Her offshore accounts were unfrozen, and she was ordered to pay back every cent she'd hidden, along with penalties for her deception. Watching her face the consequences was oddly satisfying, her bitchy smirk replaced with a look of pure rage and helplessness. She tried to argue, to manipulate, even threaten, but it was all meaningless now. The judge saw right through her, and I felt a strange sense of closure finally settling in. In the aftermath, I took a deep breath and started to rebuild my life. I moved into a new place, small, modest, but mine. I cut all ties with her, blocked her number, and refused to let her drag me back into that toxic mess. I also reached out to friends and family I distanced myself from during the chaos. Their support kept me grounded. I realized that the betrayal wasn't just about the money. It was about her complete disregard for everything we'd built together, her lies, her cheating, her manipulations. But I also learned something important. I was stronger than I thought. Looking back, I see how naive I was to trust her blindly. Emily was a master at lying, at pretending to be the perfect wife, but underneath it all, she was just a selfish, greedy woman who wanted everything her way. Her inheritance, her offshore stash, her affair. She'd been building her own empire of lies behind my back. And I was lucky I caught her before she managed to run away with everything. Now I focus on myself. I've started therapy, working through the anger and betrayal. I've learned to set boundaries, to trust my instincts, and to never ignore the signs of trouble again. I also learned that sometimes revenge isn't about getting even. It's about reclaiming your life and dignity. I'm not the same person I was 10 years ago, but I'm better for it. I know I'll never forget what happened, but I refuse to let her define me. My advice to anyone who finds themselves in a similar situation: trust is fragile. Money can bring out the worst in people. And when you realize someone you love is lying, cheating, and manipulating you, stand up for yourself. Gather evidence. Fight for what's rightfully yours. And don't be afraid to walk away if that's what's necessary. Because at the end of the day, your happiness and integrity matter more than anything she ever took from you. I've learned that the hard way, but I'm finally moving forward, stronger and wiser than I ever thought I could be.